this is Fusion Manage that I have up on the screen here now. What you'll see here, this is my dashboard. And right now I have some reports up here, some charts. These charts are dynamic. As data in the system changes, if I refresh my page, they'll update in real time. I have a list of work items here, my outstanding work. These are all of the things that I have assigned to me. Some of these records have due dates, and some of them are very overdue, as you can see, right? And then I have things like bookmarks, things I need to get back to frequently, and then the things I've looked at most recently, right? So one of those problems we talked about at the very beginning, I can't find things, right? Where's my stuff? Something like your dashboard in Fusion Manage goes a long way to helping you find things. In addition, of course, to searching, you see up here at the top, we have both basic searches and you can get into very detailed searches if necessary. So let's take a look at a relatively simple process that spans a lot of different activities, but ultimately is a chain. There's a chain of events. And I'm going to start with pre-process, in this case, a quality inspection plan, right? So I have a plan here for how we inspect resistors that we get from a supplier, right? So this is an artifact in Fusion Manage. It is a quality inspection plan, right? It has some metadata like a number, some information about the sampling process. There's an attachment here of a PDF of the spec sheet for this resistor, right? So I don't have to go digging on the manufacturer's website if I need to see, what their published tolerances are, for example, or any other information about it. I have all that information here at my fingertips as part of this inspection plan. If you need, more detailed written instructions, maybe for how to take a measurement, you could certainly attach that as well. You could have information here for what equipment to use. You could have, and that equipment could be also maintained in Fusion Manage from like I would say maybe basic asset management and things like calibration, right? So any information you might need for someone to be able to come here and say, how do we inspect this part? What's important about it? What measurements do we take? In this case, we're measuring max power and resistance on these resistors. When you want to tell someone, hey, inspect that resistor, this tells them how to do it. And if it's configured properly and someone has any relevant experience at all, they could look at this plan and not have to ask any questions about what they need to do. It could be very clear. Right? So this is the plan, and the plan is maintained. It actually has its own little mini workflow. It's either in use or we're disabling it because we need to make a change to the plan, and then we put it back into use, and then eventually maybe we change it significantly enough to where we just need a whole new plan, right? So, at any time, someone can look and say, okay, this plan isn't ready yet. This plan is currently being used, and maybe we have some others that are currently obsolete. So again, the ability to get the right information at the right time without having to, have a meeting or make a phone call or send an email, right? It's very clear. And even the history of this, right? Earlier this week, I made a change to this record and then I put it back in. The change that I made here actually was to add the spec sheet. Right? Now, when it comes to actually making the inspection, we can manage that in Fusion Manage as well. In addition to just the plans, we have actual records of the inspections. And if you notice here, there's a very important flag here for pass or fail. So if, as you know, someone executing the inspection, I could actually say I'm going to do a new inspection, pick the plan, right? That's my resistor here. Pick the part number that I'm actually inspecting here. So this guy here, right? Pick my supplier. We are doing it internally. It didn't come from the vendor, right? And I could put a deadline on this, and this would actually put a due date on my to-do list, right? And this is information that gets copied over from the plan itself. So I don't have to fill all of this out. I only have to say, what plan am I doing? What part number, is this associated with it in our database, not necessarily the manufacturer part number, but our part number for this resistor. Right? And now we have this record, and just like the measurements from the plan, those measurements that I actually need to execute are added to the plan here. So we can see it is currently in progress, and these are the measurements that I need to take. Right? So that's where, as now the person executing the inspection, I would come in here and I would fill out what the actual measurements were. So I don't necessarily need to know, like, nominal here and deviation are here for reference, I suppose. But as the person, executing this inspection, I just put in the numbers that I see on the multimeter. And when I hit save, we can see it already did the math for me. Both of these failed based on whatever, design tolerances we have against this resistor. But as the person doing the inspection, maybe that's not important to me. It's not my job to worry about if what the implications of this failing might be. I just execute the inspection, and when I'm done, I'm done, right? So from an inspection standpoint, the person doing the inspections maybe all day, that's all they have to do. They just did their job, and they go and do the next thing. Now, because this failed, however, what that led to was there is now a non-conformance. If you see spawned in C down here. So because this inspection failed, that actually automatically in the system created a non-conformance record. You can see that was literally just created here. I'm in the Pacific time zone. So it is 9:28 for me right now. So just the act of that person executing that inspection automatically created a non-conformance record. And this has its own workflow. And because this got created, this is now going to land in someone's lab. Someone's going to maybe get an email notification about it. It's going to show up on their work list, and they don't have to go ask Bob, hey, did those resistors pass? Right? They failed. Bob didn't have to tell anybody. He just did his job, and now we have a record of a problem here, right? So here was the part number that failed. Here was the supplier. Here is a link back to the inspection. So I don't have to go, okay, this failed. Which inspection was it? What were the numbers? I've got that information right here. 2 clicks, I've got it in a new window. If you know how to use hotkeys, you could do it in 1 click. And so I can see exactly what happened. When was this inspection? What were the actual measurements? How far off were they? They were off by a lot, right? And so now, as the person responsible for dealing with this, now I have information I need to push this along, right? So now I can take a look and say, okay, non-conformance, like I think I just saw something last week from Yageo. What is this, a one-off? Is this going to be a bigger issue? I'm not sure about that. Let me go back to my dashboard, and I have a report up here already, non-conformances by supplier, and I can just take a quick look at this and see, okay, yeah, we do have some non-conformances open from them. I wonder if this is a bigger issue or not. right? So I could look at that report. I could look at all of my non-conformances here, and I could even filter this by supplier. I don't know if I have supplier up here or not. I do. So I could say, just show me all the ones um, by uh, by this supplier. I can see, okay, there are 3 of them here. There are the 2 that are already closed, and I've got this one that's in progress right now. Um, right? And you could even add additional information like, okay, how recently, um, you know, how recently have these things come up? And, they've all been within, the last X amount of time. Where did that go? Last modified on. That's what I really wanted there. And they were actually all this week. So, this is a problem, right? We've got something going on maybe with a supplier that we need to address, right? So that's where now, as the person who needs to elevate this, okay, maybe, this is pretty severe. This was a lot of 2000. I would say, major issue could be lying down if not resolved, right? The supplier's already filled out for me. Maybe I would go track down the order number that those things came from. Maybe that was on the inspection report. We had performed this inspection as we received the parts. We did the QA, right? And then other information here that maybe I don't know the answer to yet. Maybe that's not my job. Maybe it's just my responsibility to raise the issue, right? And then pass it along to someone else who looks at it more closely and decides, what are we going to do about this? Is it how big an issue? What's the actual business impact? Um, Lying down, something like that, and say we need to send these back. Um, you know, sort of signing this, saying I'm the person who says this is what we need to do, right? Um, Now from here, we still have a non-conformance. We need to decide what's going to happen here. Notice right here, a reminder notification gets sent every 3 days. So, especially in this case, maybe it's a very important issue. And this is the kind of thing that's configurable in the system as well. I could remind you every day with an email saying, hey, you still need to look at this. You still need to look at this. So things don't fall through the cracks, right? So I thought I was done here, but notice the red bar across the top. Define if a CAPA has to be initiated, corrective and preventive action. So basically the idea here is, as the person who's reviewed this, is this a more systemic problem that we need to investigate? Or is it a one-off that we just need to solve? Right. And in this case, because we've had some issues with a supplier recently, maybe I do need to say, maybe we do need to take a closer look at this. Right. So there's a choice here for initiate CAPA, say yes. So now it's time to solve this problem, approve it. And so now people are going to get notified. If it's a reject, an email could go to procurement saying we need to get this, these things are made. But now in addition, so now once they've done that, what we've said is we can't just close this. We need to take a closer look. So that's where we need to initiate this corrective action. So just like our quality inspection failure spawned a non-conformance, just by me as the person reviewing this non-conformance doing my job and saying, yes, I think we need to take a closer look, by saying, please, yes, initiate a CAPA, a new CAPA has been created in the system as well, right? And again, all of that information gets passed forward. The supplier, the related non-conformance, right, is right here that I can get right to it. I could actually just take a quick preview of it as well. I don't have to open up in a whole new page, right? And so now we have an entire workflow, maybe with a whole different set of people, because this has now been escalated. It's not just, oh, we got one bad shipment. It's like maybe we have an issue with a supplier here, like, or maybe it's a product issue. Maybe this is just what the supplier can do for us now, and maybe they were the best supplier we had anyway. And so maybe now we need to make a design change to accommodate maybe the different tolerance on this product we're receiving, right? And so this is now above my pay grade as the person who just, looks at this particular lot of components. Someone else has got to decide how we're actually going to, solve this long term. And so now we have this entire workflow to define the problem, measure the problem, analyze it, execute some sort of improvement, right? And I don't necessarily want to go through all of the picks and clicks here because this obviously becomes a whole big process. But if we just take a look at one of these that's already been completed, I think somewhere in this process, I thought we had one of these. Here we go. So a CAPA can lead to a lot of different possible resolutions, right? Because this is really just, we think we have an issue. Let's analyze it and come up with a solution, right? So it could just be an RMA. It's a one-off problem. We just need to resolve it. It could lead to a problem report, which is, a slightly less formal process, or maybe this CAPA resulted from a problem report, let's say, rather than an inspection. Maybe someone just noticed a problem. Maybe it was like an assembly issue. An assembler could fire up off a problem report that could lead to this CAPA. But ultimately, to help solve this problem, to move the process along, that's where the change request comes in, right? So at some point in the process here, once we decide, what improvement steps we need to take, that ultimately will spawn a change request. So now maybe engineering is getting involved because maybe we've decided, it's a problem with product, not necessarily just something we got from a supplier, or again, maybe there's nothing we can do about the parts we're getting. We need to make a design change to accommodate, this change in part that we're getting, right? So that's where the change request comes in, right? And the change request involves a new set of people, approvers. There's a workflow for the request, right? Someone said, well, to solve this problem based on a change in supplier, we need to make a product change, which is obviously much more invasive than just finding a new supplier, because now you're changing your product. So there may be a whole set of tasks that need to be performed to determine, is this really going to be worth it? What's the cost? What's the business impact? Before we say yes, we'll change the product, we need to take a look at it and decide, right? And so that's where this step comes in: review and impact analysis. At which point, maybe at this point, because we're going to change product, we need a whole group of people to review. And then eventually, if they decide, yes, this is something we need to execute, that's where a change order gets spawned to actually execute the work, right? So you can see down here, related processes, change order. So now this is where the change was actually executed. So now we're down to the point where we have a revision to something in the system, right? And it, again, has its own associated workflow to perform the change, make sure that the change that's going to be made is what we want, actually put the change into practice, and then make sure that it's implemented, right? And the nice thing about this system is as you go from CAPA, getting to the right part of the workflow, automatically spawns the change request, which involves the right people, automatically spawns the change order, which involves the right people. And then once this gets implemented, the system goes back down the chain, and marks the change request as completed, marks the CAPA as closed. And at this point, everyone down the chain gets notified. Remember that CAPA you initiated a month ago? There's been a change to the product involved in that, and now hopefully that problem is solved. And this could go all the way back down to the non-conformance and say, yes, this problem that we had, right, now it's resolved. And it was resolved by in this case, the very detailed business process that we had. So now the loop is closed. Right? We started here. We went through an entire process that ultimately led to a product change. And now we're back where we started, and it's all buttoned up. And we maybe didn't even have to have a single meeting about it. No piece of paper floated around desk to desk for a month. And 6 months from now, if somebody says, why did we change this? This seems silly. This was such a minor change. Well, there was an inspection that failed. And then that led to a non-conformance, right? Which led to us investigating and realizing we need to change the product to better accommodate what we can get from our suppliers. And you can go all the way up the chain as necessary to see exactly what happened and who was involved and what they had to say about it and what decisions were made. Now, this was obviously a very complex process, right? Multiple workflows, multiple steps involved. What you've seen here, this is all part of the default configuration for Autodesk Fusion Manage. One of the great things about this product, though, is how configurable it is and how easy to use it is. Right? So if you were to implement something like Fusion Manage, you don't start necessarily day one with this whole chain of events, right? You can start small. Your change process, if necessary, could be as simple as 2 or 3 steps if you wanted it to, right? It's either we're waiting to finish up what we need to release it, and then we've got approval pending, and then it's approved, or maybe it's just straight, just release it, right? Your change, like to get a new revision of a component could either be this simple, or it could be, this complex, or even more complex if you need it to, right? The complexity could be whatever you need.